And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
Phillip from Kansas, you're up next. Thank you for holding. Welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Hello, Bobby.
Hello, sir.
Got a question for you. I got a 3500 Dodge four-door crew cab. It's a farm truck. It has a bail bed on the back, which has a hydraulic pump underneath the hood that the Serpentine belt runs across to power that unit. What happened was the water pump was going out, so I replaced the water pump. And the belt, of course, it came off because the water pump was losing its straightness with the Serpentine, so it slid it off. And then I found the water pump was out. I replaced the water pump, put a new belt on it, and in the caller before asked about that tensioner, which was kind of a good deal because it followed this one. But anyway, I went ahead and put the water pump on, put a brand new belt on it. It ran probably 2 days, and it shredded that belt. So I took the hood back open and thought maybe I'd left something loose or something wasn't tightened, and couldn't find nothing wrong. Went to the parts store and got another belt, and they sold me a Gates green line belt, which they said was a lot heavier, and possibly they thought maybe that hydraulic pump was the reason that it shredded that belt. And I said, well, it's been on there for 105,000 miles, but I hadn't had any trouble up till then.
Right.
But anyway, I put a new belt on it after it came off, and I took it when I had the belt off and put the new one on. I checked each pulley and couldn't find any play or any slack in any of them. But I put that new green line belt on there. It ran a week, and it did the same thing. It shredded that belt. So I went back and took the belt. Of course, the belt was off, so I checked each pulley again. Could not find anything wrong. I have no play anywhere. So I replaced the tensioner, just like you said in the caller before me. I put a new tensioner on. Thought maybe it had lost its travel and wasn't holding the belt tight enough, and it rode off one of them idlers. Put that on there, did the same thing. It lasted about 4 days, and it chucked the belt again. Where do you go from here?
That's an easy question to answer. It just so happens, if you heard, you mentioned and referred to that first call that we had, talked about the tensioner, his friend that had the Chevrolet truck. And then I mentioned the fact that we had the lady who came through who was a musician and had an RV, and we put a belt on it. Her belt, let's say that the Serpentine belt, they're about an inch and an eighth wide, maybe an inch and a quarter, some of them. Her belt was about 3/4 of an inch wide because that much of it was gone. It was still on the vehicle, and what had been shredded off was wrapped around the fan. So she walked in with a belt, and I normally don't, install other people's parts because I don't have any recourse there if something happens. But I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, in the meantime, we put the new belt on, and we had a real challenge to determine which of the multiple belts fit, because it was a Itaka RV motorhome that was on a V8 Chevrolet chassis, year 2000. But as it turned out, it had a pulley that was out of alignment. Now, we didn't know this until we put a new belt and we cranked it up, and you heard this flap, flap. And just fortunate it happened in our shop, and also just fortunate that my ASC technician, Guy Rayner, said, there's a problem here. And so we automatically said, well, we know it's the tensioner, because the tensioner was weak. He could reach up with his hand and just pull the tensioner back. The spring was just like not even non-existent. So we put all that on there, and I said all that to say this. When we finished what we thought we were finished with the new tensioner and the new belt, and someone had just put an alternator on it, that was in alignment, and it was the right belt, and everything was cool. It still, it being the Serpentine belt, wanted to walk forward on the crank pulley. And leading the belt into the crank pulley was the power steering pump. And Phillip, on the power steering pump, and I suspect that your hydraulic pump is identical, on the power steering pump, the pulley for the pump is pressed on. And when you replace a power steering pump on a vehicle, the shaft of the pump, you know what I'm talking about, the shaft that sticks out, right?
Yes.
That shaft, it has female threads. And what you can do is you use that and a tool, a proper tool with a collet, and you pull, and by pressure, you pull the old pulley off, you press it off, but you can't press the pulley because you'll warp it. So you're doing this by grabbing its collar, like ring around the collar, which is how it's made, and it's beefed up in order to do that. And we found, in fact, Johnny Bars walked over and helped. There were 3 of us on this vehicle because this young lady had to be in Jacksonville by 7 o'clock. She was playing a gig that night, and she plays a guitar. And and she was cute too, so that didn't hurt. But it was a fun event, and ultimately the power steering pump that did not look new, the pulley on the power steering pump had moved forward, or sometimes someone had replaced the pump and did not press the pulley all the way flush. So I would say to you, look at the power steering or the hydraulic pump and make sure that the end of the pulley and the end of the shaft that it is pressed onto are flush, because I
had that happen on a Chevy pickup.
Yeah.
One other time. So I looked at that already. I stuck my finger in there to feel it.
Yeah, right. Good.
And I done looked at that, and I looked for the back collar to see if it was all the way back, and it is, and that's what's got me so befuddled.
Okay, well then here's what I'm going to say, because here's the only thing that's really changed after all these years was the water pump, and
yes.
the water pump could have a shield that's supposed to go behind it that the new one didn't come with. The water pump, you use the old pulley, but it's possible that the mounting flange on the new water pump was not properly installed, or it's for a different model engine. I mean, there are a lot of different, just because it looks and fits and bolts on doesn't mean it's the correct alignment. So you've got an alignment. Now, here's what you do. You start over again. You put a new belt on it, and you run that belt 10 minutes, and then you take the belt off, and you inspect it. You put it on your kitchen table or wherever you can get, by yourself, and you look at that belt, and you will see some shredding or some bruising starting to take place on the front side or the back side. And you need to know, you can chalk it or just look at how the writing is on the back of the belt, how it goes on, so you'll know the front or back. And you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then the belt will say, hey, I don't like this, I'm being chafed. Maybe you can look at the belts that have been ruined, and by chafed, if it's either chafed on the front or the backs, if there's whichever pulley is out of alignment, and that's your problem, whichever pulley is out of alignment is chafing that belt and trying to steer that belt in the wrong direction. And that's just not going to work. So I know that you think that you've looked at that, but now you need hard evidence, and that hard evidence is going to come directly from the new belt. And don't run that belt till it's damaged. Run that belt until it's bruised. And then you'll see where the bruise is, and then you'll save yourself a belt, plus you'll be able to locate it, which pulley is off. And therein lies another discussion. And, not being there, I can't go any deeper, but there is a pulley that's out of alignment. Unfortunately, it's difficult from any angle to look at, across standing perpendicular to the belt and the pulleys to determine that one is that they're all in the same plane. But they've got to be. They have to be within the same plane. Otherwise, because that belt will go, it will bend, it will do the back flip, and it will do a lot of bending, but it won't go sideways. It's not meant to go sideways.
All right. We'll look at it.
Hey, do call me back. Let me know what you find next week, and then you and I will pat ourselves on the back.
All right.
Okay. Good luck.